And every weekend we've been doing a very different format. We've done brain trusts, we've done fashion talks, sus fashion talks, we've done sus art in the past, private equity for sustainability. It's only going to get more interesting because every Saturday we're doing a very different format, and we ask our mafiosos to own the format that they want to follow and educate the rest of us. Today we're at 51 mafiosos, all representing various themes of sustainability. We are growing slowly and steadily, and we have big ambitions. So one of the ambitions of the Mafia is to create a canvas where our own members can recommend projects that they want to see collaboration on, and if executed well, would actually have a really big impact on our own environment. So in this sus talk, Poonam Kasturi, our awesome mafioso from Daily Dump, has brought us a project, and she wants to eliminate the use of single-use plastic bags at kirana stores and small vendors. Super ambitious, maybe doable, maybe not, we don't know, but we like to think we can try. We definitely have the right stakeholders that we're putting together. And in this workshop, we're going to try and get you to put your hand up at the end and say that I want in. And for the next couple of months, hopefully have you participate. So over to you, Poonam.
Thank you, Anirudh. And welcome to everybody, because we are seeing 23 people here. I think I was, Daily Dump's been thinking for some time to do collaborations here, and all of us in Bangalore have been talking about, okay, how can we actually collaborate? And the reason why I think collaboration is pertinent even more now post-COVID is that we're all, I think, understanding that how the world was working before and how the world needs to work now needs to be slightly different. And systemic problems will only get solved, in my opinion, if there is enough collaboration across people who have expertise in different sectors. And I don't think we're doing enough of those kind of projects. And very often it's also because it's practical constraints are there. You're busy with your own life, you've got a company to run, or you're doing some project, or you've got a job. And you hardly get the bandwidth to actually say, okay, how can I actually look around and see how are these and this and this and all connected, and how can we all leverage our collective abilities to solve it? So that's the basic reason why I thought when Anirudh reached out saying that he's already setting up this platform, I said, this is brilliant, because this is the way to go. And I really think Anirudh's got a great idea, and Ganesh have got a great idea there. And I think everybody who's participating in this platform needs to get together in smaller groups and do more things. So this is our saying, all right, well, we're going to try this. Yeah. So that's where we came from. And we've been thinking about this plastic thing for some time. And we just put it together saying, okay, and one of the things that really inspired me is Mr. Dhawan's LED bulb structure of how he got that done. It started with something very tangible, but then Mr. Dhawan also, I mean, he describes it also, and it's recorded how he had to build the ecosystem, redesign the ecosystem, saying, okay, the supply was not there. He had to get the supply in place. He had to create the demand. And how did he manage all of this so that they all became this new system? So taking a cue from that, I said, okay, is there something that we can learn from that, to inform us about how we can tackle this very, very persistent problem that we're having with single-use plastic? So this is just an imagination, okay? This is not exactly how that possible solution would be. Just imagine that today corporates are actually paying money for mitigation. That means you use your plastic, you throw it away, somebody comes and collects it, takes it somewhere, and that is sent for recycling. So somebody's collecting and sending for recycling is paid for. So instead of that, can we have corporates actually paying for reduction of use of plastic? That means corporates decide to pay for the fact that that plastic never got produced. So let's look at this use case of this lady. She goes to the store. She doesn't mean harm, but she's just forgotten her bag. So at the counter, she actually asks for a bag. And that guy says, okay, you look at this, scan this code in. And she scans the code in. And there's a service which allows her, either there's an incentive or there's a reward, or there has to be some social contract or some value exchange over there at that transaction point, which is a nudge for her to want to do that. And then she is happy, she's got something that she can reuse. But the back end of the system is supported by somebody who's stocking and managing inventories intelligently for all these various stores and different levels of stores. And maybe we give from the store side is a little bit of brand space for the CSR, the brand who's supporting this. And this stockist actually is taking the material or whatever material is from smaller, decentralized, income generating units, which can be as small as even 2 people. And but they're they aggregate, and the aggregation is done simply, and you get efficiencies of cost in that. And we're seeing that so this could possibly be a solution, but is it going to be the solution? No, it's our imagination. So this is saying, okay, can we imagine? So if we have some hunch that, okay, we'll try and work to something like this and say, okay, where should we go for that? So let's go back to what is the problem. I mean, nobody in this group needs to be told this, right? All of us know this. Currently, what is happening is the lady goes to Kirana or even a local sabzi mandi with a cart. She forgets a bag. She not only asks for a plastic bag or gets it, she asks for 3 more. And that person at the counter will give her that 3 more. She uses it, she throws it. The plastic bag goes down the drain into the mouth of flog. Some others are lying there. Rag picker picks it up. Rag picker has to take a lot of them to give it to the kabadi wala. And the kabadi wala, this is, just remember, it's low value plastic, and Shekhar will tell you that low value plastic has absolutely no value almost. And if it has got some aggregation at all, if you want to put it into tar, ring roads, if there's any exchange value, transactional value in that, somebody else is selling it to a recycler. And maybe the recycler gets the money from the brands who are sponsoring the plastic cleanup. However, not using a plastic bag is far better than removing a used plastic bag from the environment. And Amishi, we're quoting you here. Recognizing the time and location for a bad habit is important. So I think that for us, it's very clear. Ideally, all of us would agree that if we didn't have the plastic bag, at that point, that would be the best case scenario. Yeah, we don't want the plastic bag there. So what is the challenge? How can we prevent the use of plastic bags? We believe that you have to form a collaborative group, because Daily Dump or Hasrudullah or XYZ alone are not going to be able to solve this. It's sitting in that intermediate space where it needs all of us to put our efforts in. And we have to make it easy, economical, fun, and a default choice to not use single plastic. So there has to be an alternative, and it has to be viable. It has to work in the market. It has to be cheap enough. Even volumetrically, there's a problem. A stack of plastic bags on a cart, if you measure it, right, it's like minuscule. But if you take a stack of the same number of even any other kind of material, the volume increases, the size increases, the footprint increases. So the end-to-end design prototype must be scalable to other single-use plastic touch points in our cultural context. And I think Seher has already done work in the plastic straw on this. To build confidence among sustainability to form collaborations. And this is, I'm not talking about sustainability leaders who are leaders in the large format sense of the word. I'm saying there must be everybody. It must be like thousands and thousands of people. And all of us need to keep this. Can we do this? So why is now the right time? I think there is a question of this time is also right, because I think we've also increasing a whole lot of other plastic use during COVID. And this may be the right time to actually go in and say, all right, this is urgent enough. I just saw a call out saying that from the government saying that we're going to give you funding for creating waste management facilities for medical waste. Now, if you have the same legacy mindset, you'll go and create the same kind of solutions. You won't change the system. And I think smaller prototypes that show that an option is possible, I think is very important. So I definitely think the time is right now. It's not like this has not been tackled before. I'm sure lots of people have tried, but we do know that it's also a behavioral issue. We've had all kinds of multiple bans. So we have to look at it from the behavior and from the design side. Yeah. Next. Why can't, yeah. So this I explained before also. I think that it's very important that everybody collaborates at this time to do this. And very often we feel in our minds, it's like the collaboration has to happen at big levels. That means the government has to collaborate and you have to have a big player and you have to have a huge amount of money. I don't agree with all of that. I believe that there is also a possibility of doing very nimble, lean prototypes, show the effect and show the power of that. And then you can say, all right, to scale it, you need to go to larger players. Okay, so I am biased towards design, but I really think design is a very powerful tool to actually look at reasons of the gaps between what people say they do and what they actually do. That is where the insight is when we want to make behavior change. So reducing plastic bags is not only the issue of price, but it's also the issue of what our relationship with it is, how we behave with it, where we don't use it, where we choose to use it, where we think it's free, where we think it's needs to be paid for. So all those mental models actually drive how we use things and behave around things. So and design is very good to unravel that. And that's why I think we should use a lot of design process to handle this, tackle this. So this is how we plan to actually go ahead with the flow of the project. And at each stage, we've put down the number of people we need and the kinds of people we need. So you'll see that there is a core team. There has to be design. We're actually talking to the Association of Designers of India. I'm going to talk to some design schools to see if we can get some design students. Eventually, I would like to reach out to MacArthur Foundation, the Alliance of Plastic Manufacturers. There is a whole level of little industrial associations around plastic. We want to talk to some startups who are working with the Kirana stores directly. And there are lots of them in Bangalore. So we will do a staged kind of understanding who key stakeholders are and try and getting them on board as soon as our groundwork is done. But our groundwork needs to first be done before we go out and look for the next stage of stakeholder participation. Next slide.
Would you like to explain the various stakeholders that we do require for this project? I mean, you implied, MacArthur and but from within the mafia and friends of the mafia.
So within the mafia, whoever wants to be. I mean, there is that's the whole point of the platform, right? The platform should ensure that whoever really wants to contribute or is interested, right? Very important is you must be interested. If your interest is in the area of just pure energy and you're not interested in this at all, you will not, right, sign up for this. But if you're really interested and you want to also be a part of it, please, most welcome. Because this is based on anybody is welcome. The gates are not closed.
Yeah, I put a bunch of jumping in, but when do we get the chance to volunteer? At the end of the thing, or how is it?
Yeah, Anirudh is going to manage that right now.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. So yes, so just I'll quickly go through the list of questions usually people have, so that we can then spend time at the end of the session for other questions that we may not have answered. Ideally, all the people who form part of the collaboration, we strive to give it a name. We'd like to give this a project a name, right? And that way, we'll get excited. Okay, there's a name, and we're all working around it. And most people feel, then nothing will come of it. No, if everybody can be part of it. But we need to create a core group, and we have to say, all right, these are some rules of engagement. And people say, all right, now we just keep that, plan it, and work. People will say, okay, what if it doesn't work? I have no problem. If it doesn't work, at least we tried, and that's absolutely fine with me. Who can be part of it? Again, I think I just answered that question. But we do need sectorial expertise. We do need somebody who has a larger idea of the policy and across South Asia. Because if you look at plastic pollution of single-use plastic, this region in the world is actually creating most of it that goes into the ocean. We're not even talking about, I think Vinita from our team was doing some research and she found that the microplastic in soil is something nobody's talking about. There are only 2-3 researchers and they are actually putting out large danger signs on that. Because you can see microplastics in water because it's a different medium. You're not able to see microplastics in soil. And so there's a lot of work that's happening there because lots of countries are doing soil sequestration programs, carbon sequestration programs through soil. So that work is going to now reveal something else in the future. So yeah, so the important thing is we must have some key stakeholders that the group will, in the discussion, will find who we need. Why is it hosted under? I think I already answered this. I think that having a collaborative platform with different kinds of people is a great crucible and a great ground on which to seed things that are collaborative. What will happen when egos clash? Please remember, egos will clash. It's not a problem. But the core team will sort it out, I think, in a fun and happy, non-political way. And if, I think in one of those things I read, where did my samosa and tea go?
It should be there somewhere. I didn't delete it. But the line was, we need hangers on who will provide the samosa and chai.
Very important. Yeah.
Not my line, your line.
Yeah.
That was in the previous slide.
It was there? Okay. All right. So the thing is, very often when I see documents, right, and I see like reports, right, I get very, very scared because it's like pretending that we know everything about this world that we live in. I have a problem with that, right? Please take it as a pinch of salt for my issue. It's a personal issue. So none of this will ever, whatever I put on there will never sound officious. But I think it's very serious work because design is very, very serious. And if you are looking for something that is very, very scholarly, design doesn't align so much to that. Of course, there's scholarly articles on design research, but this is action. This is actually learning from the field, feedback, going back, it's all that. So if you're really wanting that kind of flavor in your interaction or that kind of project to work in, then I'm putting a disclaimer up front saying this is not going to be one of that. Yeah. What's the next slide? Yeah, and so our disclaimer is also, we put up daily dump. People can say, why is daily dump part of this? We've had this question, that's why we put it up to the group. We don't have a political agenda. We don't want this, the work that comes out of it to be owned by us. There's absolutely no such reason why we're doing this. And we're also part of a global platform, which has got Ashoka, Echoing Green, Schwab Foundation, and Skoll. That is called Catalyst 2030. We're members of that. It's a similar kind of platform. Nobody's doing it for any money. There's no promise of any grand thing. It's just that we're saying, all of us who are working and interested in the same area, it's time we listen to each other. It's time to see whether we can actually make systemic change through collaboration. And our work is basically through design process. That's our strength. Yes, so this is it, people. Now we are very open to lots of questions.
When you're doing systems change, right, there are so many different leverage points. When I was listening to your presentation, I mean, I obviously thought about why don't we just ask the government to make the cost of plastic bags 10 times as much, right?
Yeah.
Because then presumably, at least naively, then there'll be much less usage of them, and in parallel provide an alternative, right? Yeah. Which is like more reasonably priced. But right. If you've read, Donella Meadows, points to intervene in a system, right? When looking for leverage, structural change actually is not the most leverage point to intervene. It's actually the most leverage point to intervene if you change the paradigms of the people who are in charge of the system or the stakeholders of the system. So what I'm trying to say is that maybe in our intervention design, we should also have communication to policymakers and plastic manufacturers and so on and so forth, and basically change their mindset, completely disrupt it,
Yeah,
Uh,
I would not say that would not be a possible solution. That's why I was a little hesitant to put the solution up front, because I don't know what the solution is. It's just one of the many possibilities. And like you say very clearly, structural changing a system structurally may not be the most effective. But we also have to do a balance between low-hanging fruit and what can be done as a trigger and a nudge, and also do policy. So I don't know. So that's the whole point of the project, right? Having people who will say, okay, this is the chart, this is the ground, and this is where we want to go.
Absolutely.
We haven't designed anything yet.
Yeah, I think it's also really interesting for me that you kept saying the word systems, and you mentioned your systems coalition as well, and you drew a causal loop diagram. Because one of the things which might be interesting is, to explore different approaches to draw, systems, causal loop diagrams of the soft structure of the system, for example, the motivations of the kirana shop owner, the motivations of the people in the intervening supply chains. Another thing which I would sort of, since I'm interested in waste and circular economy, is when you said MacArthur Foundation, did you mean the MacArthur Foundation or the Ellen MacArthur Foundation?
Ellen MacArthur Foundation.
Okay, because they have, yeah. So they have, obviously, as you know, different circular business models, right? So it should be very interesting to actually, see how, we can also change mindsets and language away from linear value chains to more circularity, and introduce that. Because I believe EPR, and I believe like waste management process is like the central place where you start creating circularity, right? Like recycling materials.
It's interesting you're saying that. One of the things that I feel is that as Indians, right, we don't see, there are many Indias, right? There are so many Indias at the same time. And somebody was telling me yesterday that the akharas single-handedly control so many choices in so many houses of India, right? And like you say, you go to the government and say 10 rupees more. You can go to akharas and say, the heads of akharas, and say, I'll say plastic bag band. Or you can go to mutts in the south of India and say, so I'm saying levels of influence, all of this has to emerge when the project actually starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just getting ahead of myself, but it's
very interesting. I completely appreciate this, because I think unless we relook at this from completely fresh, right, we're not going to be able to find a enduring solution.
Poonam, that's an interesting point you brought up, about these religious leaders bringing these things up. I mean, I've been thinking about that for so many issues, whether it's water or whether it's air, whatever it is, right? I mean, it's consumer behavior is like so influenced by some of these religious leaders.
Absolutely.
And that would be a great place to start.
Yeah, no, because we don't realize, we are English speaking. I come from a convent educated school. Okay, I'm old. Okay, I'm fossilized and I'm colonized, right? But the issue is there are so many Indias, and if we are not cognizant of that, right, and this is really behavioral. Mr. Dhawan's here, but it's, it's not even as tangible as a bulb that will give you some benefit from energy.
Right.
So you can hold in a hand. Na? So this is like so ephemeral in that sense.
Exactly.
I just have one more point. I think, especially since Hasirudala is also on this call. The thing is that like part of the political economy, I think, is like the livelihoods questions which are embedded in this problem, right? And it should be like whatever solution we design, if it's going to disrupt livelihoods, right? In some way, we should also look at that. Like, how do we ensure like our unintended consequences? I'm just saying that. In the global north, this kind of question might have been a pure, resource use and efficiency problem. But for us, it's also like a socio-economic problem because of, the way in which waste management is done, right? Like with people in the loop and so on and so forth. So we should I mean, it's a more complex problem, I think.
So Shekhar would have something to say, Shekhar?
Yeah. So, Hari, it is interesting, and it gets debated a lot among those who it gets debated a lot among those of us who work with waste pickers because 45% of their daily livelihood comes from plastic, right? Especially things like, for example, PET water bottles, right, is the highest priced in the whole waste chain, which is easily pickable and tradable and so on. But interestingly, when the Bangalore ban happened for the bags, carry bags, we actually spent time with waste picker groups and asked and explained to them why the ban is happening, what are the downsides of it, and without anyone voicing otherwise, they all said, if it is truly so bad for the environment, it is okay for us to lose that source of income. It was an interesting thing that they came up with. And today, interestingly, the ban has helped to a large extent. Other dry waste collection centers, we get 90% less plastic bags than we used to earlier, right? So it is, as you say, we have to, for example, like Poonam talked about, the back end could be people who, we skill differently, or the reverse logistics of the bags could be taken up by waste pickers. So we should find ways of reskilling some of these people to be able to take on new opportunities that come up, and also leverage whatever they already know. So I hear you, and I think you're right. We need to be cognizant of it, but beyond a point, I think they also understand and are willing to come along if you're able to offer them a place in this new system.
Absolutely, sir. I think also what I'd say is that this cycle of intergenerational poverty and staying in the same profession, right? Maybe we could ask the government how to align this reskilling with, shifting them out of it. It's just a suggestion,
Yeah. No, in fact, we do that. All waste pickers who work with us have to take a pledge that their children will continue in school till the 10th. In fact, that's our biggest fear after the pandemic, that people will pull their children out of school because they can't afford it. So anyway, but that's a whole different, yes, you have to kill that cycle.
So I'd like to just also step back a little and say, okay, the notion that mitigation is one part of the solution, right? But how do we move the whole system to pre-mitigation? That's the other big thing that I think we need to think a little bit around and say, okay, how much can we drive that?
If I can just make a comment, I think that's a very important question. The way I'm understanding is, how can you change the relationship between individuals and consumption, right? And the creation of that plastic waste. So pre-mitigation, if I understood it correctly, means don't try and clear up the problem. Try and not create the problem to start with, right? So that, I think, like for me, when you were giving your talk, one of the biggest sort of flashpoints was we're all in a tizzy that we're consuming less, and our economy is, of course, contracting. But that whole thing, that consumption is good, growth is good. Okay, fine. But consuming more, does it mean creating more plastic bags, right? So that's the link where you can make it circular and say, okay, fine, maybe you don't create more plastic bags as you consume more, even if you need to consume more, right? So pre-mitigation, I think, has something to do with consumer behavior and the relationship to like non-perishable like goods, and how they, but it's a very interesting question. I'd love to explore it more.
The other thing I want to just share, Radhika, since we talked about this religious thing, Ramakrishna Mutt actually in Mangalore had decided that they are going to promote composting at every home, because that particular Mutt leader had decided that this is a very good thing to do. So he called me up and he said, I want to sell you composters and you have to give it to me only at 500 rupees each. Yeah. So the cost, I was not giving that 500 rupees to the potter also. The potter was getting 900 rupees. So I said, then that's not possible. This is not a mass produced item and the potter needs to get 900 rupees for every set. Right. He said, no, because I'm giving you 1,000 ka order. And he wanted to subsidize it and give it to 1,000 people. Our experience has been that he could only get one level of interest, because beyond that, nobody wanted to even pay that 500 rupees to the Swami. In spite of that, he is a Swami. Right. So it was an interesting understanding of that. And I'm just wondering, how does that experience translate to something like plastic? Because in a puja also, when we are going to all our temples, much plastic, right? Yes. So I think we have to consider use cases, and even if we take it for one use case and do a really thorough job on that and completely use design, I think this project will be worth it.
No, and I see your point, and that's absolutely, that's like on the practical problems, right? That when you actually think it's a great idea, but just practically, does it really work? Yeah. I mean, like we know a religious leader who has a good following here in Bangalore and across the country. So I was talking to him about water management and air pollution and all that, and he actually incorporated it in his discourses. To Tarek. Now, how much impact that has actually had on listeners, I don't know, right? I mean, we can't, it's like not measurable, but maybe over time, right, these things will sort of, penetrate and, will start becoming a way of life, maybe. But there are things like composting is a hard thing to do in a sense, because you're expecting people to not only buy these and then the maintenance of it. Correct. I mean, it takes a lot of commitment to actually see a good composting cycle through, right? And after the first time, then it becomes easy. I mean, we've all done that, and so yeah.
Sarah, you want to add something?
Yeah, so we did do a small pilot, with coconut vendors, trying to help them transition out of the plastic straws into the ones that are made out of coconut leaf-based ones. So these are made by a small women-run enterprise and started by a Christ University professor. And they're literally just coconut leaves that have been kind of rolled with a really cool retrofitted equipment. They use like the base of a sewing machine to kind of with the foot paddle and then like hand roll it, which is great and it's compostable. But of course it's 3 rupees versus the plastic alternative, which is 50 paisa. So what we did was we applied for a grant from Lonely Whale Foundation, which is started by this Hollywood producer. So really, it took us, there was no access to funding to kind of experiment and do things locally, so that we had to kind of look at this potential outside source. But of course, now I think it's much has changed. When we applied for it, it was like almost 3 years. It also took 1 year for the funds to come in because of paperwork and things becoming so stringent around foreign funds coming in. But anyway, we worked then with a bunch of university kids to help them identify a local coconut vendor in their area. And basically each of us kind of within the Bare Necessities team and outside, we kind of worked closely with this one vendor. And we said basically just pay us whatever. Actually at first we just gave them free boxes to see if they're willing, if just people are adopting it, etc. Then the next stage, we basically asked them to pay whatever they're paying for their plastic alternative. And then we basically just use the grant money for the gap. And then, but even then, it's kind of hard for, I think a lot needs to happen, right? The ecosystem needs to be, we need to have alternatives that are good and high quality. We need to have a lot of volunteers on the ground to make sure things are going smoothly. We need to make sure the demand was okay for us. They couldn't produce this at a pace that the coconut vendors needed it, for example. So that was another hindrance in our, so I think we made a lot of mistakes and we had a lot of learnings from it. So we're happy to share, we kind of compiled some of those learnings and even some policy recommendations about how if really we want to reimagine the Swachh Bharat, there is single-use plastic bans, or the promise of making the bans that didn't really happen. But what does that mean on the ground? What does that mean for ground level realities to make that actually a reality. So I think there are some learnings that we could potentially incorporate into this project as well that we're happy to share. My colleague Mehul is also on the line. I don't know if you want to share anything. Feel free to add.
I would like to make one comment related to, I don't know if technology is a tool for anything, but many times technologists like us always try to bring technology as a solution, but I'm not trying to do that. But however, I would like to add, what I realized when it comes to water is bringing transparency really helps. And today that transparency doesn't exist in a domain like water. So I wanted to understand, is there a way if we can actually bring transparency by use of technology? I mean, supply chain has used something like blockchain. Again, I'm using big words. I don't want to get people carried away just because I use the word blockchain. But having said that, if there is a possibility, I would like to explore. And I would also like to offer something to this discussion. I'm offering a course on product prototyping at my alma mater, Institute of Science, starting from August. So some of my students, the course is about building product prototypes at the end of the course. And some of the product prototypes have led to building companies and they have been very successful, done business more than 1 crore in less than 1 year of operation. So I'll be happy to offer my course students for this project. If there is technology is any solution, as I told, I don't want to start with the technology as a solution, but if there is a possibility technology solution like using blockchain or something, I'll be more than happy to offer my students to this project. Make 8 people's work on this project only.
Wow, that's a very, very big, generous offer. Thank you. We will take it up. We need lots of technology. I mean, the world is only running on technology now. Come on.
I don't want to believe that, but if you're saying, I'll rather believe more.
No. I think there has to be a technological component, because otherwise, how are we going to manage the logistics that need to change? It's just the efficiencies we will need. But it's just that I'm wondering, Ganesh, with all the technology that I see around me, my common man perception is everybody's creating the same thing again and again. No? Or is it just a very naive view that I have? Like a Swiggy app looks very close to a Dunzo app with a little bit of tweak.
Yeah, I think as you are a design person, you would know God is in the details. Right? I mean, so
yeah, okay.
They have fine-tuned it for that particular application. But yes, as you say, the most of the backend could be similar, and that's why they have a common producer. Like Amazon gives them all the backend so that all of these guys do the same work.
No, but I think that's a very, very important point, and we would love to have your students and your expertise on it. And I hope that you will be part of the team.
Sure, I would definitely like to take that. In fact, Hari has also been a mentor to my course in various levels. So I would also involve that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So actually, this is a very interesting discussion because I think the interface between technology and society is design, right? So design, you frame this as a design challenge. Point 1. Point 2, you can use design thinking to design a business model to solve a problem. That's perfectly that. In fact, is more scalable than expecting somebody to fund it through grants or government forever and ever. But I'm seeing an interesting value proposition which actually came out of the revision DWCC's workshop, which Sensing Local had done with the BBMP. Poonam, you were there for that. So I'm just throwing it out as a moot point, as a potential use case, which we might be able to use. So as I understand it, and I may be wrong, the extended producer responsibility regulations say that the manufacturers of whatever are responsible to clean up a certain, or have to pay some money in proportion to their production of their particular kind of plastic, let's say. Correct me if I'm wrong. But one of the things which could happen is by using tracking and so on and so forth at the DWCCs, you could then count how much they're actually liable for. To fit it into the narrative which you have made, you would show them a business value in producing less, maybe somehow, so that they save more. And it would tie in with what Ganesh says about transparency and accountability, because if you made those statistics public, right, through open data dashboards and things like this, then and if you made them believable through using tracking technologies like blockchain. I don't know if it's possible, but if you could, then they would be incentivized through this public kind of thing. They might be to actually produce less. And the challenge would be, how do you distribute that pressure throughout the value chain? But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but this is one of the ideas which came out of revision.dwcc, that the DWCCs have all the information on how much of what kind of plastic comes out and so on and so forth. This information is valuable for anybody who wants to fulfill their EPR regulations, and for anybody regulating how well companies are fulfilling their EPR. And therefore, you can have like a business which like creates data as a service, for example, and you could have like a public facing thing where an open data platform creates like public pressure to create less plastic.
I should also add that Poonam has been super proactive and submitted our interest for Circular Innovation Jam 2020 already.
Yeah, we've applied for that, by the way. This whole project, whoever's the core team is going to be part of that whole thing.
I want to actually call out on 3 people as well in the group right now and hear your thoughts. Mr. Dhawan, is there any parallel between how you made LED bulbs a default choice for India and this?
What can we learn from you, Mr. Dhawan?
You've done this like on a massive scale. Then I also want to hear Dimagi angle, if there's a data collection angle to this, and JPAL, Sai. So if you could go in that order, that'd be great.
Okay, well, the LED example was really one of demand aggregation and creating sort of a critical mass in demand, which justified creation of capacity and as a result, a lowering of cost. And the demand really flew out of the fact that supply existed at a much, much lower cost. So I'm not sure this is exactly the situation we're looking at here. I think we're looking at reducing demand of a particular kind, maybe changing buying behavior or the need for bags, and potentially creating an alternate supply source that is both most environmentally acceptable and obviously cost competitive. But if I can quickly draw on my experience in the energy field, I see parallels with some conversations in energy efficiency and what we call demand side management of energy, and the concept of megawatts, where you actually, most of the time we're talking about megawatts or kilowatts, etc. But megawatts is a conceptual sort of construct where you're actually trying to quantify the reduction in electricity consumed. So I think this will need more discussion, which I'm happy to participate in. But I think one level of approaching this is creating and quantifying and maybe monetizing the reduction in plastic bags used and consumed, and obviously that's connected to alternate in supply and buying behavior. But just as a short answer would be the concept of a nega bag or a nega kilo or a nega whatever of plastics consumed.
Very nice. I'd love to know what the cost is of one plastic bag not used. How wonderful is that? I think that even that would be one nice graphic. Nobody knows the cost of one plastic bag not used. We know the cost of one plastic bag used. No, even that we don't know. Even that we don't know.
Sai, you want to introduce yourself and hop in?
For sure. Thank you for inviting me to this session again, Anirudh. And it was wonderful to hear about the potential to reduce single-use plastic. So a brief background of the work I do. So far, I work at JPAL South Asia. I work in the policy team. And so far, I've been working on the finance sector and cash transfers and health, child health sector. But I'll be transitioning to the energy, environment, and climate change sector. And yeah, that's going to be the transition from last week onward it started. Of the points that you did raise so far, now there's no direct, again, evidence per se that speaks to this, but something that potentially can perhaps be thought about is a lot of these, if it's an intervention, Sir, you were saying about the straws with the coconut vendors. So it's an issue of like, again, take up, right? Like what's preventing a lot of them from take up, and you've delved into some of those issues about like it's not cost effective enough yet for them to do it. So in that sense, unless the price comes down to a comparable level, it might not be the case. But on top of that, could you provide some information, say, to the consumers themselves? Like if you if there's some way to disclose information to a consumer, you pay 1 rupee more, and this is the benefit that you get out of it. So that information disclosure could potentially help. So you're transferring the cost from the vendor onto the consumer in that sense. About the composting, now again, what some of the work shows is that there are projections of, say, technical projections about how much compost can be made from it and how much waste is reduced from that front, but actually how much is the reduction in waste, it is generally far below projections. So it's important to take into account the what the like ground level reduction in waste would be in order to just then try to scale up the innovation. So again, I think it's a question of like how you collect information on this to know what's exactly happening on the ground within these households who do have composting. If they're not listening to a leader ahead of a month, like what are the other sources of information that they would rely on? I think that is interesting. So I think something that comes up is some of the work on social networks is generally people with authority may not be the ones who are the ones best equipped to like disperse information about like activities. So there's an interesting evaluation in Haryana that some of JPAL affiliated researchers did. So it was a social networks evaluation on immunizations. So what they are trying to do is you have like a normal dissemination program, I suppose, for immunization camps, and this is through regular government channels about like how information is dispersed. So you would think that this goes through like systems of authority, but another evaluation was like, how can we leverage the community to do this? So I think a very simple question that these evaluators asked the community members is like, who do you get your information from? If there's an event happening in your community, who will tell that information to you? Who would be that person? So they collected nominations from a bunch of folks, and the person with the, they collated information on who the 6 individuals within that group had the highest number of nominations, and they sent information to them directly. So the take up of immunization camps there was like a lot higher as opposed to regular methods. So I think like who actually within a social network that people trust with information is like an open question. Now, I would say for health information and for immunizations there, it makes sense. But for things like composting, it might be a different person, and it's an open question. Like we don't know yet like where it would, like what kind of information you would find there, like who people would nominate in that sense. So those are 2 broad things that come up. There are a lot more, but I'm just getting into the field and getting into the evidence on this. So yeah.
Poonam, I'd say we have like 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
4 or 5 more
Sai,
minutes.
I didn't get where you're working, please.
So I work at JPAL South Asia. So yeah, it's for background, it's JPAL is a network of affiliated professors who in almost actually every instance they work out of universities, either in the economics department or political science departments, and they run randomized evaluations or randomized controlled trials of development programs. Yeah.
I really like the point you made about who do you believe. I absolutely, completely agree with that. Who do you believe? I don't believe the government at all. I mean, I get that.
Can I raise a question? A question I have, and it's like a more general question. And I think it's a very important question for the sustainability mafia in general. And since we have policy folks also over here, I think, it'd be great to hear their opinion if possible. So the question which you asked, right? Like, what is the cost of not using a plastic bag is a fundamental question, right? Because what we're seeing in like classical economics would be called a market failure. And, because of not costing the external costs of collection correctly, for example. So I'm just raising the question, like, why is it that, the cost of the cleanup and the cost of, the social costs and so on and so forth is not costed into the cost of that 50 paise plastic bag? Is it the lack of evidence, or the lack of research which says this is the actual cost, or the lack of a single party to whom you can cost it? Or I just throwing this out because the same question will arise as to why don't we have a carbon tax, right? So what is it that prevents society from correctly costing the true implications of a particular product? And it's it's the most important question, I think. So I'm just pushing it out because it comes straight out of your question. It's a fundamental question.
Hari, this is Shekhar here. Actually, I've written a piece on how the whole capitalist system, if you really see right now, the focus is on cost of production, is not on cost of consumption, right? So you have things which can be external to your cost of production pushed out, hoping that someone will take care of that cost, right? So all externalities is what we are trying to deal with in the environmental space, and trying to bring that externality into the producers and the consumers' ambit is which is why, for example, in waste management, all our business models are around polluter pays principle, right? Or our pay as you throw principle. So I think we need to, one way, of course, is to try and identify what those costs are. And we have done some work in doing that with Accenture and Ocean Conservancy and so on. For example, it's typically between $28 and $40 a ton. That is what it takes additionally to collect that waste to put it back into the system, right? If you do it properly. That's just one study that Accenture came up with. So, but how do you, it's only when people start thinking of cost of consumption that they will design refurbishability, reusability, repairability into their products. But today that is not, it's always an external. Even repairability is AMC, right? Annual maintenance contracts. So that is the issue there, I think. And somehow we have to figure out how do we bring that into the ambit of the consumer and the producer.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. I look forward to reading that article. I'll search for it. It would be a great research question to bring up with, the Makata Foundation, because it's central to how their business models also should function, I think.
So Anirudh, what do you, Manjunath?
I would say that, we normally do office hours after our SAS talk, and we did have half an hour for office hours. To be respectful of everyone's time, if you have to hop off, please feel free to hop off. But we can totally use our office hours also for this discussion because there's so much more work to do.
Manjunath wanted to say something.
Yeah, ma'am, because I always think about, how you take the awareness to the next level. The brand ambassadors, for example, local brand ambassadors like Puneet Rajkumar or Ramesh Aravind, they take a lot of followers with them. Their messages takes it very directly. Have you ever thought about, ma'am, you're doing a great work. I saw your website, and it's amazing work you're doing. Many people, citizens are not aware of the kind of work you do. So the best way is to have some brand ambassador. Puneet Rajkumar or Arvind, they carry a lot of followers, in their own fraternity. If the message comes through them, I think it reaches a lot of people, and then there'll be a buzz around it, and they will really take to action. And that's what is my suggestion, because I come from a media background, so that's what I think in that level.
Yeah. So, Mr. Manjunath, you're going to be the media person for this project. You are going to get Puneet to say, "I don't want single-use plastic bags." Come on, that's the challenge.
Ma'am, I'll just definitely try to connect with I don't know about Puneet because he's a big star, so I'll try to reach out to him, but I'll definitely try, ma'am.
No.
I actually spoke to the director of some movie which was produced by Puneet Rajkumar. His name is Hemant Rao, who was my batchmate in RV College of Engineering. He's now a successful director. So I'll just check with him. I actually had a call with him last week, saying that if there is somebody who can help us talk about the work that Sustainability Mafia is doing. He's also the scriptwriter for the movie Andhadhun. He won a national award for that. So let me see if, but he told me this, one thing he told me, if these guys are themselves not practicing sustainability or this one, they may not really want to do it. And most guys don't practice, the film stars, they live in a very different kind of world. So I told you it's very difficult to actually ask these people to talk about it. If not, it become Deepika promoting Fair and Lovely ad. I mean, these are words he said, not me.
So I have a suggestion to that, Ganesh, because this actually is coming out of the revision DWCC workshop again. The idea there was to make the people who sought out the waste the superstars. So my suggestion is, and I also want to say to Sai's point, in a different context, in terms of food security, we actually I was part of a study which ran a controlled trial on the effectiveness of different change makers in society, and the women's SHG groups turned out to be the most effective by a factor of 3:1. So I'm just throwing out a suggestion saying that can we take the waste management workers who work in the DWCCs themselves, especially women, and can we use our media platform partners and so on and so forth, for example, like Smart Sustain, to make them into superstars, maybe, and also rope in the mainstream superstars. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah. So as I told you, I'll definitely talk to him and find out if there are, ideally we should get some of the superstars who are having that bent of mind. Each superstar would have one cause they want to work for, right? They would not have, do it. That's what he was telling me. They would have one cause to work on, whether it's hunger, whether it is pets. So we have to identify a superstar whose interest is in sustainability.
Ganesh, Upendra is, at this organic farming and used, only, organic menu. Recently, I saw a video. Upendra is
okay.
Yeah. So I'm just saying there are people. It's not
so
that all.
We have to identify. Correct. We have to identify what is whose forte or whose focus is sustainability or clean tech. I mean, the best person would be Leonardo.
Ganesh is gone.
Leonardo DiCaprio, he was saying.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Ganesh has been on the hunt for a green influencer for us. So, yeah. And we're starting to see three nexuses form. There's an energy nexus, there's a big water nexus, and a waste nexus. So we may actually need three types of green influencers to represent each.
There's also an energy water waste nexus, right? So we need like a super mafioso to.
Avni, I skipped you earlier. I want to hear data management side. Can you give Dimagi Comcare pro bono?
If I'm working on the project, I think voluntarily I can definitely work on it. Just for the benefit of everyone, Dimagi is a Boston-based technology for social good company, and we build mobile data collection tools that could be used by people who are working on the program on the ground to collect their data on people, on entities. So for this particular discussion, I was thinking you could track things like the plastic bag itself, the people who are working with those plastic bags, or the vendors or the shops. And I think to Ganesh's point about transparency, there's one thing that I know a lot of the customers value, that it's good to have data from the start of your program all the way to the life cycle, because that shows your impact. And I think that could be a good driver for maybe getting Leonardo DiCaprio in the future, just because the program's impact would be measurable. So I think in that sense, data collection could be really useful, and that's where Dimagi could step in. The pro bono discussions I'll have with Ani later, I guess, but I'm definitely excited to work from the data angle on this particular project. So if I'm doing it on my own, then there's definitely room to work around that.
That's so good. I think this data side is something that we definitely need help with, Avni.
Yeah.
Avni wants to volunteer a daily dump.
Oh, you're most welcome. My God.
Yeah, I'm very personally really passionate about waste segregation and dry and wet waste. And I think from a larger lens of city management and where that waste is actually landing up, I think it bothers me a lot that in India, we don't really have really good systems. But going back to the data point, I think the one thing that I think Hari was speaking about is having dashboards in place that would show that data that's actually coming out. We don't really have public facing dashboards unless you create a dashboard and send it out to your audience or to people who you want to show that to, be it donors or be it like grant organizations. But the ability to create dashboards out of that data is definitely there. And I think it would be really useful for something like this, especially since we're trying to track behavior change as well. So not only will you be able to track how much plastic in numbers has reduced, but how many people have actually changed their behavior based on your program and the design of what we're doing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how this can be implemented.
Really wonderful.
One point, Amishi, would you like to pitch in somewhere on the front of how can we make these behavior changes, or how can we nudge these people to change their behaviors on these fronts?
Yeah, I think this is a really exciting project. I left a comment very sneakily in the chat section rather than trying to talk, because I think there's so many people who are wanting to talk. I'll definitely connect with you, Poonam, offline about this as well. But I think there's a lot of parallels that we can draw with other sectors that people are doing with behavior change, right? So, for example, when we spoke about the whole livelihood section, what immediately came to my mind was poaching is a source of livelihood for a lot of low-income communities in and around forests, right? Which is why poaching occurs, because they don't have the money to sustain. And someone I know, El Rhino, I don't know if you know of the organization. So El Rhino is an organization that does this in Assam, where they worked with those same communities to instead take the elephant dung and make paper out of it, right? So I thought that was a beautiful example of how to challenge the system, but do it in a way where everyone benefits. And I think when we're designing for this, like I had written in the article as well, I think it's really important to know who the end beneficiary is. So if we decide on the fact that it is a woman who more often than not is going and buying at the Kirana store, and at that point looking at a plastic bag, what are her needs and wants that we can tap into. So another example that came to my mind was Big Basket and how that solved the problem, right, for working women, at least in Mumbai, where there's been a significant increase over the years of women working as opposed to being in the house as well. And we do have a largely younger population in this country. So when we're looking at a more futuristic way to solve this problem, we need to look at, okay, how do we create more time for this working woman who eventually may not have the time to go into a Kirana store, and at the same time solve the plastics problem. So a Big Basket model is one where you don't have plastic at all, right? They come to you, as in, of course, there's plastic in the individually wrapped grain and the wrapped flour and stuff like that, which is why we need someone like a Seher to be supplying to Big Basket and creating a loop-like solution. But if we just created some sort of format where local Kirana stores could also follow a Big Basket-like system, where you're also creating more time and allowing for home delivery for the woman, where it taps into her need of being able to spend more time for herself and for her family, and at the same time solving the plastics problem. And also it's a low carbon footprint kind of a solution, right? Because you're aggregating the demand and then one person is going and meeting that demand. So I think there's a lot of aspects to this, and we can consider. I would love to personally work on this problem for sure, because plastics is something that's close to my heart. I started with that, and that's something that I feel strongly about. So would love to take this discussion offline and help on this.
Perfect. No, perfect. In fact, I was the interesting thing is the bigger players are understanding, like Big Basket definitely understands that there is no need for plastic. India is going to see the trend of a lot more organic stores coming into the market, which are online. They will also not use single-use plastic. So the single-use plastic is actually going to level off. But I was using the single-use plastic as a metaphor for saying, how can we look at mitigation as a last case? And like you say, maybe the solution is we don't work on the plastic bag at all, but we work on a loop kind of thing. But even with the loop, right, in India, the way loop should function is going to be very different from where it functions abroad. The Absolutely. Economies of scale, what is it? So I think we should just say, all right, like you say, I completely agree with you, who benefits and for what are we trying to really achieve here? Yeah. And I think single-use plastic, if we actually go to the field, like Shekhar was saying that it's 90% less in some DWCCs. I think the key thing is, where is it actually coming out the worst? Where is it polluting the worst? And then if that can teach us something, is there some lesson we can learn from that? Yeah, we should figure out.
Absolutely, 100% agree. I don't think this is a problem that, like you said at the very beginning, it's a very wicked problem. I mean, I think for me as well, when I started out, there were lots of obvious solutions that people often talk about. And then the more you know about the problem, and it's like a black hole that you get sucked into, and you just realize how complex the challenge is. So I don't think this is something that's going to come out in a day or, you know, a short conversation. But yeah, there's a lot of case studies out there in other sectors that we can translate into something like this and then test it out and see if it works for a country like India with our informal economy.
Yeah, and I think if there's a group of us who's really interested, we can test out many things. And so that I think is very powerful. As a process, I think that's very powerful. And then from there, somebody else builds on it. I think that's something that we have to invest in.
100%. I completely agree.
I have one suggestion.
Yes, Hari, please.
I know I'm talking a lot, but this is a problem I care about as well. So I'm just wondering about the nexus with education, you know, because, you know, I'm hearing the terms, this is a wicked problem, nobody understands the problem, it's a complex problem, systems problem, so on and so forth. So, you know, shouldn't children be knowing about this problem? Because they are going to inherit like the problem one, I mean, and how do we show them the complexity of the problem without necessarily shoving a solution down their throats? How do we involve them in the process of understanding the problem and exploring problem space and innovating as well? How do we get them to become change agents? Like, for example, I met somebody from the Netherlands a few months ago, and you know, she was talking to me about, she was a hardcore corporate person, and she was saying, how do we become more sustainable? And I said, you know, why are you doing this? Is it for your brand or something? And she said, no, it's because of Greta, right? Like, so how do we leverage that, you know? And that's the movement in the world today, right? Like the old order and the old leadership is on its way out, you know? You know, there's a new movement which is waiting in the ranks. So how do we leverage that, you know? Is my question.
I completely agree. I'm a great one for getting kids and saying, okay, now you do the work. I think they'll have fresher ways of looking at it. That's why I was very keen that Arundhati's son speaks. Because because I think this is a ideal thing, and I think that's what I think the group needs to do. We need to figure out, okay, this problem we want to frame in 5 different schools. We'll get on Zoom calls with the school kids. The point is, I'm saying none of this we can do unless we form that group, and it has to leverage the collective strength of all of us, right? Now, I individually can't do all those things. I can't. Can any of you individually do all of it? Put your hands up. Individually, you can do it on individually, I'm saying. So we have to have this group. We have to have a group. We have to have saying these are roles and responsibilities. This is your job. Okay, come back. Let's regroup. Okay, what have we learned? Okay, what do we need to do? Do brainstorming. So that's the only way it's going to happen.
So Poonam, it's interesting you mentioned this, because this is actually a trend in the non-profit space. Like there's a concept called a pop-up think tank. Have you heard of this?
No, I have not heard pop-up think tank, but I know 10% think tank.
Yeah, so this is a pop-up think tank. You know, people who it's like, okay, we're interested, I'm interested, you're interested, she's interested. Okay, so now for the duration of our problem solving, let us pop up and form a think tank. You know? So
I agree.
And
think tank with action, not
Anirudh, very important. If you don't do, then no way, nothing. I could hold everybody. By the way, I'm very bad taskmaster.
That was my first and only constraint when we started doing this project also. To be designed in a way where it is actionable. So that we have something to work on and that we can keep moving forward. Otherwise, you know, we're sitting in an ivory tower just talking about things that may not materialize. And that won't be fun for anybody.
Adding to Hari's point, I should say Amish is already doing that work. So I actually got 1 year back or 2 years back, I got that board game that she had developed as part of Upcyclers Lab, which I presented to my niece. So that talks about playing a board game to understand energy efficiency. I mean, how energy wastage can be reduced. So the forgetful Bob thing. So I think I wish he could tell more about what Hari had asked on how kids can actually be a role.
I'm glad to know that you remember the character name as well. So clearly there is a case to be made for family being impacted through a product made for children. So yeah, definitely. I think children are very important stakeholders. That's exactly the work that we're doing, like you said. But I think also to the point that we discussed before, it requires a multi-stakeholder approach. It can't just be children, because you can't be like, here, we made this problem, now solve it for your own future. And I think a lot of the times what happens is that while we do need the optimism that kids come with, you also need equal proportion of realism in the group, and that comes with a lot more age and experience and sort of on ground realities. And when we talk about stakeholders, it just can't be also from the same sort of like, there has to be diversity in the background that the kids come from as well, and adults come from as well, because a perspective of a rag picker or a waste collector could be very different from what our perspective is. And I think it's important to have everyone's perspective, because it's a problem that plagues all of us. So even region wise, I think what you mentioned about Bangalore and the plastic ban not being implemented, I think in Maharashtra it was different, because the plastic ban for a little while at least was implemented quite well, and it was strict. Now with COVID, we saw it getting stricter, because people were even more concerned that the plastic bag that they got from outside was infected. So all the more reason they kind of took their own cloth bags out, and they made them from saris and from all of the waste things that they had at home. So yes, kids, definitely developing tools for children, getting them involved in the conversation, making them important stakeholders is important, and happy to help on that front for sure. We already develop a lot of tools, and happy to develop more tools like this for this particular project.
So
yeah, I just want to add one more thing, since Hari, you raised this part. I just want to give an example. I had been to Singapore last year exactly at this time, and I met a friend, and he was always breaking rules while we are going. He's an Indian, and he knows it's like in all ways he was breaking rules. But his son, who's actually he actually was raised in Singapore. He was telling his father every time, "Dad, you should not be doing this. This is not right." So, I was very inspired by how Singapore government has enabled that thought process in kids, and they actually tell these parents. And I was very inspiring to me. And I do feel that if there is a way we involve education also in some way, kids especially, and kids communicating with their parents if they are doing something wrong. I don't know how Singapore, I saw it was just an instance, I don't know, but that guy was very clear, telling his father, "You should not be doing this." So
one specific, that's a great point, Ganesh. But and what I want to say is, like, for like Amishi and everybody else who's like interested in this approach, right? One specific challenge which I'd like to throw out there, for whatever it's worth, is I believe on the basis of my reading and all, I might be wrong, that the reason that much of this behavior happens is because of the NIMBY effect, right? The not in my backyard effect. I don't know where this plastic goes once I throw it. Somebody in the waste management system may have a very different perception. They know exactly where it goes. They sort it out, so on and so forth. So, but I, as a, like a upper middle class consumer person who doesn't know any better, doesn't care or know once it's NIMBY, right? So my design challenge as a sub-design challenge would be, how do you design an educational intervention where children get converted from NIMBY to YIMBY, right? From not in my backyard to yes in my backyard. I know exactly where this plastic goes. And of course, the rest of the theory of change, where, like they, we could gamify it and give them points for converting their parents and family and so on and so forth. But I'm just saying, like, for me, that's a critical part of the puzzle, right? Like knowing where your waste goes.
I think, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot right now, but I think children today and the education systems today are a lot more woke than we give them credit for.
They are, yeah.
A lot of kids, we've done workshops and sessions, and the kids will come and tell you things that you won't know, and it'll blow your mind, because they have access to so much information, and they genuinely care. Because schools have started introducing this at a much earlier age. And it's not like we think that we need to educate kids. Often you're learning from the children, and they're developing these amazing solutions. I honestly think we need to work with them rather than think that, oh, we have something to impart to them, and then go from there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So then I'd put it this way: how do we make like more people, not just children, ask the question, what happens to my waste after I dispose it?
That's the challenge, no? That's what we have to design for, and that's not going to come out so easily from one conversation. But I think a lot of people now know that it's not in their backyard because they're seeing it all around them, and they're seeing that it's a challenge. So there's a lot of work that's already been done on this, and I honestly don't think that problem exists. I don't think the awareness problem is a problem. A lot of people think, oh, we'll do environmental awareness. I think everyone's aware. It's that they don't care, and that switch comes from children because they have more time, they have more optimism, they are able to do these things that as adults sometimes you don't have the time, you don't have the bandwidth for, and you are quite pessimistic in life by the time you get to your mid-20s. But they are, like I said, they are that important stakeholder in this conversation, but that there's many other sort of people we need involved, right? Like Poonam mentioned earlier, we need the manufacturers involved, we need the rack pickers involved, we need a lot of these different sort of stakeholders involved in that conversation that a child may not have the perspective already. So that will happen slowly, and that is something we need to design for.
Actually, Amishi, I agree on the front that most people know it is harmful for the environment. But I should also tell that 10 years back, even I knew it was harmful for the environment, but still I didn't know why it was harmful for the environment. I don't know if of course, I don't come from environmental background, but still, I still think an average adult would still not know why it is harmful. I don't know, Poonam, do you think it is based on your experience, but everybody knows why it is harmful?
I think that I think, see, when you talk about India, no, it's very, very dangerous to talk about one India. Really, I'm telling you, because if you walk into Bhopal, no, the situation is different. If you walk into Shimoga, the situation is different. So who are we talking to? We are talking to only ourselves, no? Our type of people, right? So the point Amishi is making is very valid. When we talk even of systems change and how our mental models of India, mental models of each of us is all based on only one paradigm, right? So Hari, to make your point about paradigms, right? First of all, internally, you have to work on this. You have to really put a lot of effort in the process of saying, I want diversity. Amishi made that point. I want to be able to listen to different points of view. I want to listen to different angles of the point. Because I think that's at the core of the problem. To answer the question, Ganesh, everybody in India have different priorities. So you will only see if you are, today I'm making a house, right? Till then, I don't see any tile ka advertisements. The minute I'm making a house, all the tile advertisements I will look at. So the point is, you're asking, does everybody know? The thing is, what is the stage of life and what you're interested in? That only you will see. How do we see? How do we pay attention? It goes back to our perception. No? What we pay attention to is what you're interested in. Why am I not interested in waste? Because for me, it doesn't make me either happier or give me more money or all of those things, right? What's in it for me? So slowly you have to change that narrative that there's a lot in it for you.
Yeah, I would say it's like even more broad-based, right? It's like not just mainstreaming the waste management thing, but also mainstreaming climate change, mainstreaming sustainability, mainstreaming energy, mainstreaming our energy systems.
Mainstreaming the purpose or realigning ideas of purpose. I think that's very fundamental.
What I was trying to say is that, more societal awareness on all these factors, right? And for that, we need, like you said, to involve all the stakeholders. We need to think of them while we're sort of designing our approach.
So I think if we have a collaboration, that means we can have, like, say, if you know somebody in a smaller village, in a smaller town, you have to get people to think of those problems and bring them to the project table. Because otherwise we cannot only talk to one set of people and understand the problem. To understand it at least. Then you may choose, you may decide you cannot work on that side. That's not a problem, but at least to understand it.
I actually really like the point that Poonam made about how there are many Indias and how we are sitting here in a room and we're talking to very like-minded people, and that's a very real struggle. In fact, even within one India, there may be different Indias. So I've taught in a government school, and I know a private school in the same city versus a government school is two different worlds altogether. And it's really like we want to give them solutions, we want to give them awareness, but before that, I think what one needs to do is take a step back and actually understand what their challenges are with regards to the solution that we want to give. So for example, and there's so many case studies about how like NGOs try to go and implement a solution without actually understanding what's the root cause of that problem. So for example, think of an NGO tackling a water crisis in a village, and they go and install a hand pump thinking now everyone will have at least access to water, but they don't understand the caste implication of who can get access to that hand pump or not, and whether I'm actually going to be allowed by my society to actually access that hand pump. So a lot of it is the effort that will go into understanding the society and the people, and then understanding what their stakeholders want from them and how we can step in.
Like it's really interesting because Poonam was mentioning that we should try many experiments, right? One way to try many experiments would be to partner with, like local community-based NGOs in different contexts and allow them to, basically involve them, because they can bring the context of, this is the caste structure, this is the social structure, so on and so forth. So they should be stakeholders, and we should try it in different contexts so that we can see how to deploy and or how it works out in different contexts.
Yeah, that would be the power of the collaboration. You have to collaborate with other people. You have to collaborate with other NGOs. You have to collaborate with other community types.
Yeah.
But that core team has to be responsible and accountable for actually pushing this project along.
So now that we have all that in context, we've had this great discussion. I think this has been so rich. How do you recommend we proceed? Because we already have a bunch of people who've raised their hands, right? That was the goal of this conversation. Are you going to raise your hand if you're interested? And we have a bunch of people who have. Okay. So now what do we do?
So we need to make an Excel sheet. And we need to put it on a Google Drive, and we need to have their names, email IDs, and phone numbers. And then we have to say, all right, we're going to add some more names and all of that to it. And then we have to say, okay, for those people, we'll have a special call and say, okay, this is our plan for the next month, and get everybody's ideas, brainstorm on that, and then set up that plan. But we need to have like what do you call it? Their names in one place.
Okay. And so from the Mafia side, Rohan and I will be point persons.
Okay.
And then from Daily Dump,
Daily Dump, yes. Daily Dump, we have 4 people, but the 2 people who will be on the core team will be Vinita and me.
Okay, awesome. And we'll build the rest of the...
Seher will be there. Mehul
Seher, Amishi, Hari.
Obviously to understand what kind of time commitment and how frequent.
Yeah, so don't worry, we won't be too frequent and all.
Yeah. No, I just also want to promise what I can deliver.
Absolutely. That's one thing I told Anirudh. We all have to under promise, over deliver.
Yeah, he loves that line.
Yeah. Otherwise, we will all become satisfactory underperformers.
Absolutely. And then it loses steam and people get bored. But no, we want to make this happen, right?
Yeah. We have to make it happen.
Yeah.
Just for the joy of it, not for anything else. Now we're not going to make the world a better place. No. Let's not indulge in all that shit.
Yeah.
So Poonam, I'll invite you as a guest speaker to my class in IISc.
Yeah, I'll be very careful. I screw up people's minds.
No problem.
They'll all wonder, should we live? Should we not live? What is the point of life?
No, but it would be nice if we can tell about this topic, and I would like to see if some of my students, of course it's online only, it would be nice if we can talk about this project, and we get some of my students sign up for as a, if we go through the technology route, they can sign up. If we are not taking the technology route, I don't know.
No, but we'll get Avni to put some data thing in it and we'll shove technology in it. No, we need technology. It's not shove.
Yeah,
I'm just joking.
It's quite vital to any program, whether you do it through technology, you do it through paper and pen.
Yeah. So if it eventually comes technology way, I'll be happy to support through my class, and we also have an internship program where I can have some of the students.
Perfect. Sounds wonderful. Yeah.
But yes, I don't know social science, so I may not be the right person on that front. Only the technology.
So we'll invite you for samosa and chai. You bring the samosa, we'll give you the chai.
Okay, so I dropped off a little bit on the conversation. So are we, like, what are we doing? Like, are we kind of like drawing out rules or just like?
No, first we'll draw out a list.
Like,
and then
I heard the thing about the Google Sheet.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need? Okay.
No, that's it. For now, we'll only start with that. We'll go simply.
Yeah, there's a couple of types of roles, right? So we're not assigning roles right now, but we know, for example, okay, there's a policy aspect to this. So who's raising the hand for that, right? There's a tech angle. So, Ganesh's class and Ganesh's participation on that front. The game design side or the children's education side, Amishi. So roughly put together the various stakeholders, and then we can figure out who's going to commit how much time and what will that look like?
Yeah. I think next to the roles, what we'll do, Anirudh, you, me, and Rohan can sit and map out the time for each of those roles also. Yeah. Before we make that sheet public. We'll prepare the sheet first, and then we'll make it public for people to put in, sign, whatever they want to do.
Yeah, but it seems like we have a good critical mass number of people to begin with. We have Seher, we have Shekhar. We have at least 7, 8, 9 people.
No, I've also got those Kirana store guys in. I can even talk to Big Basket and start seeing whether the loop kind of thing is something that they will even be vaguely interested in.
Ganesh, I'd love to work with your class on technology and design, because this is
I'll definitely see. As you know, I like have more people so that my work becomes less. So now Poonam is giving a problem statement to my class so that
I'm also
I was supposed to define the prompt statement many times. So now I have a prompt statement coming.
This is a final project for your class.
So I'd love to work with that group. I mean, like it's a problem which I care about, and I think technology is very important.
Just like we did with Gopal with Gramworks, we'll do this also. Okay.
Yeah, there are also some actually like technological like challenges, because waste is like it's not like you can track an individual plastic bag very easily. So how do you use tracking technology there? So that's an open problem.
It's quite challenging, if you ask me. I mean, I'm still thinking about how we could do that. It's still not occurred to me how we can make it simple, if not simpler.
Yeah, so that's a great, and this kind of approach of this this whole workshop is a great one, where you have all the stakeholders listed out. It lends itself to design thinking also.
Yeah.